Stop benching like a gym bro, because you will get snapped up, that I can guarantee. And you won't maximize your gains either. So let me explain what these 3 deadly mistakes are. Number 1 is keeping a super flat back when performing any press. Why are lifters still doing this in 2020 when the best strength coaches pretty much universally agree that you must retract your scapula? Keeping a tight back is everything. And look, it's not that hard to do. Shoulders up, back, down, you're tight. Imagine lying down on a bench, having bands on top of a power rack, and you're rowing. You know that feeling you get, that contraction? That's what you feel like when you bench press. If not, you're like a loose spaghetti. You're moving all over the place. Or you're trying to stabilize a load when your upper back is not stable, even though that is the pressing foundation. Why do you think guys get less shoulder pain when they press off a wider bench or off the floor? Has to do with more upper back support. So to eliminate that component with an injury that is already number 1 across upper body is really foolish. It's already hard enough with the proper programming. Don't let the form screw you over because some bodybuilder told you that's going to increase the chest activation. You know that these guys are notorious for shoulder injuries? These are the same guys that are going to tell you, oh, I used to lift, or benching is bad for the shoulders. No, it's not bad for the shoulders. It's that you're using improper technique. And let me say this. I don't care what angle it is. Whether it's incline, flat, or decline, you want maximum tightness. And for those wondering about the angle alteration, who cares? Your safety is more important. And if we want to talk about the training effects, it's really not that significant. When you do any form of chest pressing, everything contracts. Yes, you can emphasize areas a little bit more through doing stuff like inclines, but it's not as great as you would imagine. And actually, I would argue that most people in the gym are going too high. The preset adjustments are like this. It's practically a military press. So might I say that you'll actually benefit from arching your back because you're getting the proper incline, say 30 to 45 degrees. Shallow inclines are all you need. And don't tell me that it's not an incline, because it is. If you're lifting close to 100 pounds less than your flat, what the fuck else could it be? Or are you going to say that that's because your flat is a decline? I've heard that one, by the way. And in that case, I would also say it's not a problem. You're able to lift 20, 30 pounds more, which compensates for that range of motion effect. And again, the entire chest contracts and you're keeping your shoulders safe. So my question to you is, are you trying to get snapped up or not? If you want to be in this game long-term, stick to this time-tested advice that real strength coaches prescribe. So I need to stress that before moving on to the second point, which is also horrific. Guys who flare their elbows out completely to the side. What you have done is internally rotated your shoulders and greatly enhanced the risk of destroying your rotator cuffs. Prepare for shoulder surgery or not being able to press at all anymore. These are the guys who say, oh, I used to lift. Stop doing this. I'm not saying you should have your arms completely in like this. That's not the most efficient position either. Actually, you lift less when talking about things like the Swiss bar or neutral dumbbell pressing. What you want is a little bit outside. 45 degrees. So instead of being here, go there. Is it really that hard? It takes 2 seconds. Boom. You're maximizing your tightness. You have the best bar path, and you're not taking away from the chest activation. You know where you should be pressing from? Not your neck or upper chest. It should be the middle of your chest, your nipples, or your upper abs. Those are the 3 best positions. And depending on your grip width, individual leverages, and how you roll the bar to your chest, that'll vary greatly from person to person. For me, I'm on the low side. On inclines, I'm a little bit higher. On flats, I would say I'm upper ab, realistically speaking. And you'll find your groove when you start lifting heavy. But it starts by tucking in those elbows. This way you protect and secure the most advantageous position. And of course, that'll bring me on to the final mistake, which is also fatal. Doing manual half reps. You know what's crazy? It goes perfectly with the first 2 points. Guys are going to have a very flat back and they'll have their elbows out completely to the side. And that's why they can't do full range of motion. Because they themselves intuitively know that touching the chest will result in shoulder pain. Isn't that a massive red flag? Knowing that you can't even do it, you can't even do the exercise properly because your shoulders hurt so damn much. That should tell you everything right there, and why you should not listen to these guys who tell you to use that fucking form. You're really gonna regret it if you go down that path, man. And the argument that you're gonna get more time and attention makes no sense either, because you're gonna get a better contraction in the chest by going through the full range of motion. you're not going to develop as nicely, which is probably one of the main goals behind bench pressing. And if you're talking about getting injured, oh, full range of motion is bad, you're 6'5", you have a super long wingspan. For one, that's nonsense. Some of the best benchers in the world are not even short. And secondly, there are things you can do which cut out the risk completely, like using boards or pins. Pins you might not want to do for rep work, and I can understand that unless you have the safety straps. Metal on metal like that, not really the best. But boards, eliminate that risk. Do a 2-board press. You'll stop right here. Feels exactly like a normal bench, but the range of motion is cut. That's all you have to do. Instead of manually going down and not even having the same range of motion every time. It's so inconsistent when you do that, and inferior because you're still getting the strainage that I talked about before. Plus, there's an additional feature which will ruin you eventually, which is the fact that if one day, if you go below that typical range of motion, you're going to tear a pec. Why? Because you never strengthen the tendons associated with that bottom position. And even dumbbell pressing. I'll say dumbbell pressing is the number one culprit on this. Very few people do full range of motion, which again makes no sense to me whatsoever, because you also have to look at the dumbbell itself. As they get heavier, they grow in size. So that distance that you're doing, that half rep, visually, if you look in the mirror, it's going to look like you're still doing the same range of motion, but you're not. You're actually doing quarter reps at this point. And that explains why you have many guys who can lift super heavy on the dumbbell press, yet their barbell version is extremely weak. That is the definitive sign that you're using improper form. In my experience, the dumbbell pressing is significantly more difficult. Not because of stabilization. You see me bench with chains and bands and all that stuff. It's harder because I'm doing full range of motion. I'm actually touching my chest. And for that, you can also go a little bit wider, but not really required. And yeah, that's the final error. If you kept a tight back while bringing those elbows in, you'd be able to touch your chest without having shoulder pain. And you would actually strengthen the bottom position, which is the most important thing for raw benching. So you maximize your strength gains, you maximize the pec gains, and you eliminate injuries, or at least greatly reduce the chances of getting hurt. So that's it for today's video. Hope you enjoyed it. I hope that if you were making any of these mistakes that you stop immediately and start training the proper way. The way that people who specialize in the bench recommend. Might I say it's the only way? Or would that be bias of me to say? You can decide that for yourself. All I'm trying to say is minimize the risk of getting hurt. And with that said, I'm done talking.